All right. Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining Automation Hour. And let's advance the slide. Okay, so if you're attending for the first time, all lines are muted, and please post any questions that you have on our Trailblazer community, Salesforce Automation Hour. And after the session, we will be posting the recording as well as the link to the deck out on our Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community, as well as our website, automationhour.com. And we will also be tweeting that out as well. And we are fully booked out for the rest of 2019. So if you haven't registered for our upcoming sessions, which includes all various community members, NVPs, first-time presenters, definitely go ahead and do so. So you can go out on automationhour.com, upcoming webinars, and register for them. Even if you cannot attend live, you'll get a link to the recording after the fact. And if you have a business use case with a cool automation solution that you would like to share on this webinar series, please reach out to us offline, Rakesh, David, or myself. And we cannot bring this free webinar series to you without our sponsor, Concrete.io. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And here are your hosts, myself, David, and Rakesh. And for those of you who are going to Midwest Dreamin', all three of us will be there. So if you're there, stop by and say hi to us in person. And with that, I'm really excited to have Randi on. She's a great community member, and I've seen her on Slack as well as other forums, providing help on workflow rules and other workflow rules, process automation, and other things. So with that, let me hand it off to Randi. So you should have control now, Randi.
I got it. Can
and
you
I see your screen. Yes.
Sweet. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Randi Thompson. I am a senior solutions engineer with CSS Tech, which is a Salesforce partner. I'm also president and founder of Imagine If Inc., which is a small indie consulting company here in the Twin Cities. And I co-lead the Twin Cities Salesforce Saturday group along with Justice and Kristen Putka. I've done a couple of different presentations, two at various Salesforce World Tours here in Minneapolis in 2014 and 2016. And most recently, I actually did hands-on flow training for the Minnesota WIT group using plastic containers. So I've got a couple of certifications, as you can see, but I think more importantly is who's my favorite mascot, and that is Hootie. And so if anybody has some Hootie stickers, I'd be more than happy to take them off your hands. So with that, here's the agenda for today. We're going to talk about the business case for the solution. I'm going to go over why out-of-the-box functionality and App Exchange did not fit any of the solutions. I'm going to show you a demo of the actual solution. Then we get to dive into the nitty-gritty details behind the flow, the two flows, and the several process builders. And then after that, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. All right, with that, we are going to dive right in. All right, so this solution comes with three custom objects. The first of which is this goal item object. The reason I actually called it goal item is because in some orgs, a goal object already exists related to work orders, and I didn't want to have two objects with the same name, because we all know what happens when you do that, bad things. So goal items it is. Then we have our schedules. This is a custom object. Oh, and I totally skipped over the business case. And no matter how many times you practice and prepare, you forget. All right. All right. So here's the business case. This particular client needed a lot of things. One, they wanted to schedule potential revenue out over a period of time directly from the opportunity. They also wanted those schedules to be created automatically based on 3 fields on the opportunity: a start date, an end date, and the amount. They needed to manually adjust those schedules if they needed to. And they wanted to have a soft validation visual cue that would let users know when the sum total of their schedules did not match their opportunity amount field. So this was especially important if they were manually adjusting those schedules. They weren't using products, and so that was a requirement that we had to work around. And they wanted to track and report on different goal segments. So for instance, they had a requirement to have a holistic company goal, salesperson specific goals, specific customer goals, and then they wanted goals associated with the account type. In this case, it was new customer or existing customer. They also needed to support custom fiscal years. And then lastly, but certainly not least, from a reporting UI standpoint, they wanted to be able to see all of these goals and the variances in a nice, easy to read format and be able to segment that report on different goal segments. So why would out-of-the-box functionality not work for that? Well, we have 2 out-of-the-box functionalities that could maybe work. First is forecasting. But here's the challenge. Forecasting only allows quotas for users. It doesn't allow you to create quotas for accounts, for the company overall, or for various account attributes. In addition, forecasting only allows one time period for quotas. You get to choose monthly or quarterly, but you can't have both, and you can't throw in an annual in there either. Also, forecasting doesn't work on custom objects. And even with the Edit Quotas app, which allows you to enter quotas via the UI rather than the API, it was extremely time-consuming creating individual monthly quotas for each salesperson. You can't create custom fields on forecasting or quotas, which means that any variant fields that you might want, such as percent to goal, would need to be created inside reports. But here we came across some challenges. So custom summary formulas, to be known as CSS, can have very weird percent results. There are some whole back-end reasons for that have to do with like decimal places and Salesforce rounding up and rounding down and aggregating and all sorts of weird stuff that happens behind the scenes. But essentially what happens is that percent CSS don't actually show the actual variance. Which means that there will be dispersions between what the CSS shows and what in reality would be your variance. Also, CSS cannot be moved around the report. So every time you create a CSS, it shows up on the far right of your report. You can't move them around for easy visual consumption of information. And you can't average the CSS. So there were a lot of pain points with creating percent formulas inside reports. But what about schedules? Well, okay. Schedules actually do allow you to manually create them and manually adjust them. But you can't create custom fields on schedules. So you can't have a lookup from a schedule to like another object, like a goal or even opportunity. You can't automate schedules because they're not available for declarative automation tools like Workflow Rules, Process Builder, or Flow. They are only available through Apex. And you cannot reference schedules in rollup tools like Rollup Helper or DLRS for the same reason that they're not available for declarative automation tools. So some challenges there. Well, what about the App Exchange? Interestingly enough, I was not able to find an app that would do both goals or quotas, or whatever term you like, and scheduling at the same time on the requested object and with the client requirements that including attributes, monthly, quarterly, and annual goals, and percent to goals. So the solution was a custom build. So let's go look at that. Now we can look at it. All right, so as I was saying before I got ahead of myself, we have 3 custom objects, 7 process builders, and 2 flows that make up this solution. Our first object is the goal items. And as I said, I named that specifically so it wouldn't be the names the same thing as an out-of-the-box Salesforce object. Then we have our schedules. These are created off of the opportunity. But we need to connect our schedules with our goals. So here we have our junction object, and this is how we connect a single schedule to multiple goal items. All right. Well, what does this look like in reality? Well, let's go create a new goal record, and we'll see how this works. So we'll go back up to goal items. And we're going to create a new one. All right, now you have some options when you're creating new goal records. These are different record types, and despite the fact that the page layout for all these record types is the same, I used record types because it's a very easy way to segment your reports. And I'll show, at the end, I'll show what the reporting looks like and why it can be that easy. But you can see that you can create goal items for individual sales reps, the company as a whole, for individual customers, as well as for that account type attribute, so existing customers or new customers. This can be expanded to, you can create goal items for other accounts or even other opportunity attributes as well. In this case, we're going to create a new customer goal record. And there's really not much to it. Because this is a customer goal record, we just want to make sure that the goal item name matches the account name exactly, because that is how the flow will be matching these 2 items up. Oh, there you are. So we just paste that in there. We tell the goal record when the revenue start date is, so it's going to be a normal calendar year. And then we're going to tell the record what the annual goal for this item is. And we're just going to say that United Oil and Gas Corp should have a 2019 goal of $650,000. Now you'll notice there are a bunch of other quarterly and monthly goal fields. User does not have to worry about entering these. As soon as we click Save, a process builder kicks off and automatically populates the quarterly goals by taking the annual goal, dividing it by 4, and populates the monthly goals by taking the annual goal and dividing it by 12. So easy peasy, just like that. And these are editable. So the business can still change and manipulate individual monthly and quarterly goals to fit their business model. These are not set in stone. All right. So we have our new goal item, but we don't have anything related to it. There's nothing showing up here. So we're going to go to United Oil and Gas. And because I was a great sales rep, I entered this opportunity early in the sales process. So I do know a bit about the amount, but I didn't yet know anything about when the revenue should start or end. But I do now. So I'm going to say that this revenue is going to start back in April. And then this client's terms are a few months, so we'll end it in July. And that's it. We've got the amount, the rev start date, and the rev end date. And now you'll see that we have some revenue schedules here on the upper right. It tells us the month of the revenue and the revenue amount. Well, that's cool. So let's go look at what these schedules look like. All right. So we've got some interesting information here, some basic information both about the schedule itself as well as the opportunity. And then you can see that we also have our goal schedules. These are the junction object records that connect an individual schedule to one of the goal items. And you can see that it found a salesperson goal item for 2019, a customer goal item for 2019, and the company as a whole goal item, which in this case is House Stark, for 2019. So let's go look at that now. We go look at House Stark. You can see that we've got some annual percent of goals. We can start to see quarterly where this particular company is at, and on a monthly basis. And if we wanted to go look at United Oil and Gas Corp's goal record, they're already at 41.5% to goal. So that's cool. All right. But now I want to point out here, hopefully, no? Oh, demos. I wonder why they didn't work, actually. All right. Well, so we're actually supposed to see some goal schedule records here. I don't know why it didn't show up there, but we'll just go look at another one. Actually, that's not the one I wanted to go look at. I swear I tested this beforehand. All right. If I look at all of these, you'll notice that I've got one where the opportunity stage is in proposal and price quote. So one of the requirements was that schedules should always be connected to goals, but in terms of rolling up revenue, they only wanted closed won business to show up in the revenue fields. And so there's a criteria, all the roll-up summary fields have a criteria that opportunity stage must be closed won. Okay. Now, there's something else interesting that they required, you may recall, which is the visualization cue to a user when their schedule totals didn't match their opportunity amount. So that is where are you? And before I explain, I need to give a shout out to Bill Powell because he's the one who introduced me to the Gopher Hey gift. And this is actually the gift that the client went with. So it cracks me up every time. But what this is like a soft validation. So it is a rich text component with a filter, and it looks at this field right here, which is just a checkbox. And it says, does the opportunity amount equal the total of all of our schedule revenue amounts? If it doesn't, please tell the sales user that they need to manipulate their schedule amounts until they match. If it does match, this checkbox will be true and our little gift will go away. As it does here. So see, they do match and no gift. Just like that. All right. So that is how the solution works. And then from a reporting standpoint, we can get a really nice report that is very easy to read, and it can be reordered in any order that the user wants it to. And you'll notice that we can even break it out by start dates, so by fiscal years or calendar years. And you can have whatever fields you want. Because they are fields on a record and not custom summary formulas, you can move these around to your heart's delight. And in this case, you'll notice that I may be missing some, but that is because I put a filter in where I wanted to limit my results to where the record type was just customer. If I wanted to remove this filter and see them all, I can do that. But as you might imagine, the more customers you have, the more sales reps you have, and the further in the future of time that you get where you create new and new and new goal records, this list can get very long. And so that record type allows you to easily segment your report based on whatever you want to look at. So how does this work, right? What's the nuts and bolts that are going on behind the scenes? And we're going to dive into this. But before we do, I have to give another shout out to Luke Freeland, who helped me debug this so many times and helped me with a couple of these formula variables. So he needs a big shout out. So Luke, thank you again for all your help. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create our schedules. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get the opportunity that kicked off the process builder that's going to kick off this flow. And we're going to grab some attributes from that opportunity. We're going to grab the start date, the end date, number of schedules, the schedules created checkbox, the amount, and the stage name. And we're going to do some stuff with this later on. And then we're going to make a decision. We're going to ask ourselves, is the start date greater than the revenue end date on the opportunity? And this is going to loop through. So for every loop through this, the start date is going to be pushed ahead 1 month. And then it's going to keep looping until that start date is actually greater than the rev end date, and then it will stop. So if we're still within the date periods, we're going to create our schedule record. We're going to make sure that it's connected to the opportunity. We have a scheduled amount formula. We have our schedule rev date, and then we have our opportunity stage. And once we create our schedule record, we're going to add it to the collection, because chances are good that there's going to be more than one. And then we're going to take that start date and we're going to add it, or we're going to push it forward 1 month, which is what happens in this formula variable. And then we start back at the beginning of the loop and we say, hey, is the new start date greater than the rev end date? And it will keep doing that until the answer is yes, at which point it's going to go and create our schedule collection, our series of records. And then it's going to go back to the opportunity record and it's going to check our schedules created checkbox to true. And this is important because this flow is fired off of a process builder that literally just checks whether the schedules created box is true or false. Because we don't want schedules being created every time an opportunity is edited. We only want them to be created the first time the amount, rev start date, and rev end date are populated. So this checkbox field is how we keep the flow and the process builder from firing over and over and over again. And then what happens is, for every schedule that gets created, a process builder fires another flow. And this gets more complicated, but not really. Basically here, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, go get that schedule record that was just created, and then grab some information from it. I want you to grab the opportunity, the rev amount, the rev date, and the opportunity stage. And then we're going to go up to the opportunity record, and we're going to say, hey, get me the owner ID of the opportunity and also the account ID. And then we're going to go up to the account record and we're going to say, hey, give me your name. And then we're going to go over to the user record and we're going to say, hey, give me your first name and last name. And then we do have this formula in here that concatenates the user first name and last name into a sales rep full name. And that's important because when we get to the sales rep lookup, which is right here, we need to match the full name to the full name. So in this lookup, or get as they're being called now, we're actually going out to the goal item object and we're saying, hey, is there a goal record where the name of the record equals the sales rep's full name, the goal record start date is less than the revenue schedule, the rev date of the schedule, of the goal schedule, and is the goal end date greater than or equal to the goal schedule rev date? If all of these three things are true, which is this decision node, were you able to find it? If you were able to find it, great. We're going to create a goal schedule record, and we're just going to populate some attributes there. But you know what? If you weren't able to find it, it's important that you notify someone because it's possible that someone forgot to create the goal record. So let's go email the admin or whomever needs to be notified that that particular schedule did not have a corresponding goal item record. And this is what happens for each of our different record types. So the next thing we're going to look for, that's our create, is we're going to go find our account type goal record. This is that new customer or existing customer. Same attributes. Basically, we're looking for end dates and start dates that fit between the rev date. And then we're trying to look for a goal item name that fits either new customer or existing customer. And we have our decision node. Were we able to find the goal item or not? If not, email the admin. If so, create the record. And we move through all the other pieces of this. So we say, now we're looking for the account name. Then we're looking for the company itself, in this case, House Start. And so that is the flow of order. That's how you get schedules automatically created and goal schedules automatically created. And then the roll-up summary fields on the goal item is how you get your rev totals. And then your percent of goals are just simply a formula field. So it's a nice, simple, sort of straightforward business there. There are, as I mentioned in the very beginning, there are 7 process builders, which may sound like a lot, but not really. We've got our goal item. So this is simply the process builder that when you create a new goal, it makes sure that the annual goal field is not empty. So this actually means that you can start creating goal items without populating all the goal fields yet. And that can be really useful, especially if you're building them for a year or 2 or 3 in the future and the business doesn't know yet what the goals are. You can at least get your record created so that goal schedules can be assigned to it. Then when the annual goal is populated, so annual goal is changed, true, and it is populated. And I'm just checking because sometimes a user might have been quirky about things. They might have entered an annual amount and had all of the goals populated, and then someone may have gone in and deleted the annual goal, but the quarterly and monthly goals are still there, and I want to sort of avoid that problem. So I'm basically just checking here and saying, hey, is first quarter goal populated? And if it's not, great. Then we're going to take our annual goal, and as I said, for the monthly goals, it's just a formula that takes the annual goal, divides it by 12, And for the quarterly, it takes the annual goal and divides it by 4. All right. Now, I know that sometimes it can be burdensome on users to update account attributes, especially because they're more focused on opportunities a lot of the time. So I took some of that data management off their hands, and I said, hey, listen, if the number of won opportunities is changed and it equals 1, and the account type field does not equal new customer, then we're just going to update it to new customer. And later, if the number of opportunities is changed and it's greater than 1, so now we've got 2 or more, and the account type was not updated to existing customer, then let's just update it to existing customer. And that makes sure that opportunity 2 plus all the schedules related to those opportunities get associated to the existing customer goal record and not the new customer, which would throw off your metrics. All right, next up is our opportunity process builder. And this is the criteria that kicks off the flow that creates the schedule. So as I said, it's just looking to make sure that when the revenue start date is populated, the revenue end date is populated, schedules created is false, so they haven't been created yet, and the stage name does not equal closed loss, then go ahead and run the schedules flow, and we'll create our schedules. But also, as I mentioned, schedules can be created or associated with goal items, even if it's not a closed won opportunity yet. So the roll-ups to roll up the appropriate revenue, the stage needs to be updated to closed won. So when an opportunity is changed and the stage is closed won, or anytime the stage is updated, we want to go update the schedules, and then the schedules, when their stage is changed, will go and update the goal schedules. So it's a cascading effect. When things happen on the opportunity, they will happen on the schedules, which will happen on the goal schedules, which is the junction object, and then hopefully that'll be closed won business eventually, and that'll all roll up into your revenue fields. All right, so that is the entirety of the automation. So now I think I will open it up for questions.
Okay, so if you have a question for Randi on our presentation or a general process automation question, if you can go out on our Salesforce Automation Hour Trailblazer community and post that, that would be greatly appreciated. And I'm going to allow people some time to do that. So while we wait, how long, Randi, did it take you to put together all that automation?
A few weeks of intensive work. And as I said, Luke and I worked very closely together several times to debug some of my decision nodes, and then email alerts weren't going out, and I was having trouble with some of the formula variables. So, you know, like most things in the Salesforce world, this was actually like a group effort. But from beginning to end, it was about 4 weeks of work. But now that I have it and I've done it, I've actually recreated this for 2 other customers, or versions of this, and it takes about 5 to 8 hours to build, depending on how much sort of additional customization I might need to do.
Okay, great. All right.
I'm just going to leave it here because that GIF is so great.
I love that. All right, here's a question. All right, so Looking for ways to evaluate existing records before creating. Hold on, is that the one? No. There was something someone said they had mentioned, but I don't see it in the community. Okay. So while I still refresh and see what's going on here, oh, there's a question in the question section. What is a rev in your field definition?
What is a rev?
In your field
Oh,
definition.
I think maybe they are asking like revenue. Sorry, revenue. Anything that's
Okay.
REV is short for revenue.
Okay. Dominic's question, cool solution, Randy. How would changes to the annual goal work? Do all amounts just recalculate, or would you have to enter a new goal item?
Great question. There was not a requirement at the time to readjust if 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 the goals were already pre-populated. There is not currently any automation to adjust or readjust those if someone changes the annual goal. And the reason for that is that in order to identify fields that were manually adjusted by user and not through a process or through system, is there's a whole slew of like a whole another set of automations that you have to run through to identify the fields that were manually adjusted and then put those aside and then take the new amount and recalculate the amount against the fields that weren't manually adjusted and then bring back, so you can see where I'm going with that. Like there's an act doing that, understanding what's been touched by user and what hasn't to do additional recalculations. Is a whole other set of automations, which you can definitely do. And Luke and I actually talked about that, but we also talked about how you could be looking at like 40 to 60 hours worth of work to build in that kind of automation. So definitely you can do it. This whole solution is eminently flexible. You can create goal records for any type of attribute, whether maybe it's on the opportunity or the account or the user record, or maybe you have opportunities connected to other objects and you want to use those as goals. Your imagination is the limit. That and, how much time you have to spend on the automation part of the flow part of it. But so the short answer to your question is that's not built into this particular solution. The longer answer is totally could, and we did think about it. But we didn't have time to build that out, and it wasn't part of the deliverable anyway. So I hope that answers the question. Because we had the same request. We have the same question at the opportunity level. So what happens if a sales rep changes the amount, but they had manually adjusted some of the schedules? And it's the same answer. You need a flow that's going to identify when a particular field was manually edited by user and not by the automation, which gets tricky because how Process Builder and Flow choose to classify their changes as whether it's a user or system. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration when you're trying to do that kind of automation. But if you got the time, you could totally do it.
Dominic's response was, thanks for the answer, Randy. Makes sense. Say hi to my friend Justice.
I will.
Okay. The Tear posted to the Automation Hour Trailblazer community But I think Michelle answered it. So I'm just going to read this. Looking for ways to evaluate existing records before creating new records through Process Builder scenario. We are using a third-party webinar tool to receive payments regarding membership. Every time a payment is done, Process Builder should evaluate existing contacts in the system before creating new contacts. Currently, Process Builder is creating new new accounts every time payment is done without evaluation. I have used a formula field to check existing records, but it is not working. Now, Batir, I saw that Michelle had responded to get existing records. You're going to need to move to Flow. Process Builder cannot sort through existing records to match on certain criteria to determine if a new contact should be created, but Flow can. And I do agree with that. So I'm wondering, Batir, why? Was there something else that you were looking for at mentioning us after Michelle's feedback? And I can wait for Batir to answer that. If there's anyone else who has questions, either use the questions section or post to the Trailblazer community. And while we wait for folks, Randi, how did you learn about Flow or Process Builder?
Well, actually, I learned about Process Builder when it first came out, and I think that was like September, October of 2014. And I was like, woohoo! And so I basically Process Buildered everything. I, at that point, had been using workflow rules for a little while, but once I had access to Process Builder, I stopped using workflow rules. Now, I've eased up on that these days in my older age because workflow rules have their place in the toolkit. But as everybody who has started dipping their toes or has dipped their toes in Flow, you start to realize the limits of Process Builder. And that's not to say that Process Builder isn't awesome, because it totally is. But it can't do things like it can't cross objects. It can't go up the hierarchy and then back down the hierarchy. It can't go, you can't do search through a whole list of items. So you can't create lists and search through them. So there are, limits to what Process Builder can do. And then that's where you head to Flow. And for those of you who are new to Flow or may be feeling frustrated with Flow, I totally get you. It took me about 2 years to figure it out before the light bulb went on. And that was only about 8 months ago. So keep in mind that, I would love to flow all the things now.
Yes.
And I have not, there are still things in Flow I've not even played around with. But, I'm sure that what will happen is I will flow all the things while also realizing that Flow and Process Builder and workflow rules all have their place. But I will probably realize relatively quickly the limits of Flow. And then that's why it's called the gateway drug to coding, because then your next step is Apex. But I just love the flexibility of Flow. Like the ability to go up and down the hierarchy several times is just so flexible. And then you've got your screens, and now you've got all these new components coming out that, you can throw logos and GIFs and like all sorts of cool stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Sounds like you're a Flownatic.
I think so. I think I can be called that now. But again, it took me 2 years to figure it out, and there were a lot of times in those 2 years where I was like, forget it, I'm never gonna figure it out. And then everybody in the Ohana is like, no, you'll figure it out. Someday the light bulb will just go on. Keep at it. And the other people would share their stories about how long it took them to figure it out, and then yeah, exactly. One day the light bulb just goes on, and you're like, I get what an S object is now. I get it. I get why I have a single variable floating out there that's not connected to anything. I totally get it now. And then, then you
Yeah.
flow all the
Yeah.
time.
When I first heard about Flow, I'm like, oh, this is great. We don't have to write code anymore. And I opened up Flow and I'm like, I have no idea. And saw that blank canvas. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm
Oh, I
supposed to do.
know.
And then shut it down. So yes, it does take a while, like especially if you don't have a developer background to get used to it, but be persistent. And like Randy said, it will eventually click. All right, so Manzi has a comment and a question. I agree, process builder are really helpful, but a lot of processes running on objects sometimes cause us issues with uploading data into the object as it runs into Apex time limit error. Would
Mm-hmm.
reducing the batch size in data loader help us to overload a single CSV with a couple of hundred records without running into the Apex timeout limit?
Well, my first question, and Jen, we might want to talk about this. My first question is, how many process builders per object do you have?
Mm-hmm.
So, right. So
Mm-hmm.
there's two philosophies. Jen ascribes to the first one, which is one process builder per object to rule them all. And my philosophy is I have one process builder for new records and one process builder for edits. So 2 process builders per object. But I imagine, regardless of which philosophy you would ascribe to, that if you consolidated your process builders and maybe moved over any workflow rules that you might also be running and see where you can combine your workflow actions with your process builders and limit your workflow to things that you want to kick off first before your process builders kick off, because that's the order of execution. Workflow rules run first, then your process builders and flow. You might find that your Apex CPU time limit error messages go away.
Great.
I hope that helps. But Jen, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have anything further than what you said. Kevin Hart asks, how is the alert automation done when the checkbox indicates that the mounts don't match?
Oh, sure. Let's go look at our Gopher Hay. Gopher Hay. I hope Bill Powell's on. And he's like, hey. And yes, we are enlightening. All right. So this is our rich text component. And here's our Gopher and our little colored text. But down at the bottom are our filters for this. So basically what this is saying is, hey, is the field amount equals schedule total false? And is number of schedules greater than or equal to 1? In other words, do schedules exist? And do the sum of all rev amounts on the schedules equal the opportunity amount? If both of those filters are true, in which case this is a true and this is a false, then show your fun Gopher Hay GIF. When the sum total of schedules becomes equal to your opportunity amount and that amount equals schedules total, checkbox equals true, your Gopher GIF will go away. Does that make sense?
I love the component visibility in the Lightning App Builder. That's so awesome. Love.
You can do some really tongue-in-cheek. I'd love to see what Steve Moe has done with it.
All right, let me refresh the Trailblazer community. Don't see any.
I will note, I do want to point out one thing, and this is, as everybody is generally aware of this limitation, where'd you go? So one thing to keep in mind is that if your users are editing those schedules, whether it's the schedule date or the schedule amount, we'll let it load here, from the opportunity record, and guess what will not happen? Your opportunity record will not automatically refresh. So if I go in here and I edit this, even though the schedule says it is saved, you'll notice, and you'll actually notice the schedule amount did update on the record itself, but the opportunity record didn't refresh. So again, this is a limit of Lightning, whether you're in a console or in a non-console. You have to, if you are editing related records, and you want to see the results of those edits on your opportunity record, you need to refresh your browser. So that's just part of user training. So you can see they're 34 cents off somewhere.
All right, one more follow-up question. Would cross-objects process builders also increase the time and hit the time limit error during data upload? Example, we upload campaign members, but process builder runs automations to update lead records.
Could, yeah. I mean, validation rules, number of lookups that you might have, if you have any roll-up summaries, all of those things add to your CPU time. So and Jen and I were talking about this before we started because we're both studying for the data arc and management cert. But they talk about lean data loading in the study materials for that cert. And they often recommend that you turn off validation rules, that you remove any page layout requirements, turn off any required fields. Like there's this whole slew of things that they recommend you do to keep your loading times to a minimum. Unfortunately, when you're already have a mature org, and maybe you have a bunch of lookup fields that are built in, and you have a bunch of validation rules, and it can be, kind of time consuming, or maybe there's no way you can turn those off, or so you might be limited in what you can do to keep your CPU time down. But there's a whole module, I believe, on Trailhead for data loading with some tips and tricks. Am I wrong? There is one, right?
Could be. There's so many modules out there, I can't keep track.
But if you Google Salesforce lean data import, you will find a whole bunch of great articles about tips and tricks you might use to keep your loading times down.
All right. The last comment I found out on the Trailblazer community is from your friend Rita, who says, great job with Process Builder and Flow. I feel my little girl has grown up.
Oh, yeah. So Rita really helped me learn a lot about Flow. I actually hired her several times to help me build stuff. And she's a great, great teacher. So thank you, Rita, for all of your help. I would not be where I am today with Flow without Rita, honestly.
Rita's awesome. I echo that. All right. I don't see any other questions posted, so rather than keep folks on, I will let folks go with 5 minutes left. And thank you so much, Randi, for presenting, and feel free to come back and present again to us.
Well,
Great.
thanks for having me, and I hope to have something cool to present again someday.
Awesome. All right. And that's a wrap, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Until next time.
Thanks, everyone.